In this video, we're gonna get into how I planned, shot, and edited these live performance music videos. Hey, what's up? I'm Mike Falabi. I'm a freelance creative director giving people tools to better tell their stories. So a couple months back, I got asked to shoot a couple live performance music videos for this artist named Ty Brazel. I was really excited because I love music. My background is in music. I actually grew up playing a bunch of instruments and I went to school for audio engineering for a little bit. So I was excited that I got to combine a couple of my passions on a single project. As far as pre-production, the first thing we wanted to nail down was the concept. We didn't want it to be super complicated or complex. We wanted it to be a simple visual that was really intriguing to the eye. One of the things that I've always wanted to do was shoot something on like a really large stained glass backdrop, not really as a lighting element, but more as just like a visually intriguing piece that kind of adds a little bit of texture. So we got to do that for this shoot, which I was really excited to try out. One of the challenges, we were shooting 2 videos at the same place with the same artist on the same day, but each video was supposed to look unique. They weren't supposed to look like an A and B, they were supposed to look like their own videos. So one of the things that we employed was different lighting techniques, using different colors just to kind of give them a little bit of differentiation between the two. Fun fact, we actually ended up shooting a 3rd video for that artist earlier in the morning on that same day. So if it wasn't for all this pre-production planning that we did, we would have kind of been scrambling, but it was actually a really fun day in the end. One thing that I've always wanted to try was using different in-camera effects as opposed to in post. Stuff like kaleidoscopes and different things like that that give the video a little bit more texture without having to go in post. For me, it's worth more when you're able to achieve it in camera, and it's just cool to be able to walk out of set and be able to know that you got that shot that you're looking for, as opposed to like having to go back and see if it works in post and hopefully figuring it out. As far as set design, we really wanted a blank canvas, open space, so that we could do whatever we wanted in that space. We were able to find a place that had that large stained glass window in the background, which worked out perfectly. We didn't get too crazy with set design. We used vertical trusses with some lights on them, as well as just using band gear like amps and road cases as set props. Some of the places that I took inspiration from was Color Studios. They do a great job of simple set design with like really intriguing, engaging videos. One of the live performance videos that I've really been into are Justin Bieber's last bunch of live performance videos. They've been crazy. The one in Paris was really dope, and there was one that they shot like in this forest, visually super engaging, but it was like a proper full live mix with a band and everything, which is super dope to me. As far as personal inspiration, I grew up in a bunch of old churches with pews and stained glass windows and huge organs and the whole 9. So I think being able to like have a touch of that in this video was a little personal inspiration that I was able to slide in there. The last piece of inspiration was pretty much every set design that Kanye has ever done. Specifically the ones where he uses like super thick haze, like low-lying fog, to kind of give this feeling of like standing above the clouds. I've always loved that. Now let's talk about gear. Let's just start off with lighting. The first thing that we picked up was the Aperture Nova 300C. It's this huge light panel with really great light output, RGB, super versatile light. Since it's a light panel as opposed to like a Bowens mount light, you can't use all of your Bowens mount softboxes and different things like that. You have to get specific adapters and modifiers for that light. But it's a great light overall. The rest of our lighting kit was 3 Amaran or Aperture 200Ds. We used them for just ambient light lift to kind of bring the light floor up. It was a really, really dark space and we wanted some contrast, but we didn't want it to be like over the top contrast. We also used it in this shot as a backlight for the artist. And we also used it to backlight the stained glass just to give it a little bit more color. And as far as fog, to get that kind of Kanye stage design vibe, we went with the low-lying fog machine from ADJ called the Mr. Cool 2. All you did was add some ice to this fog machine and it helps the fog stick to the floor a little bit better without rising and completely blowing out the image. And lastly for lighting, we got 2 vertical trusses where we put some LED stage lights to light the band and just to kind of give some visual intrigue. Now let's go to audio gear. Most of the time I won't be the one mixing the audio for the shoot, but I felt comfortable doing it for this one, and this is the gear that we used. The mixer that we opted for was the Zoom LiveTrack L12. The reason I went for this mixer is because you could send up to 5 separate mixes to the headphones, so I was able to send a different one to the drummer than I was to the guitar player and the bass player. It has 2 stereo returns that I used to send click track and tune vocals back to the artist. Another feature is that it records to an SD card. I just used it as a backup just in case something happened with my Logic file, which it did, ended up getting corrupted, so I was able to pull those files and use those for the recording. As far as microphones, we used 2 SM7Bs with cloud lifters. We also used some SM57s and 58s for the drums, and we had a kick drum mic. I don't remember what it was, but if I can find it, I'll put it here. Initially, I just wanted to use the drum mics for drum replacement in post, but we ended up getting a really clean sound out of those microphones and were able to use the actual audio from those mics. And as I mentioned earlier, I used Logic Pro 10 for all the tracking. As far as cameras, we used 2 Sony FX6s and 3 Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K. That's a mouthful. The reason we used those Pocket 6Ks was for our ability to be able to push in on those shots. Since our final export was going to be in 4K, we have that extra resolution, and they just color match really easy with different cameras. For the Blackmagics, we had one of them on a 16-35, one of them on a 24-70, and the last one was on a 70-200. The 70-200 was actually our kaleidoscope cam. They work really well with more zoomed in wide aperture lenses. We didn't really get that great of an effect on wider lenses, so just a little tip there. For our Sonys, we had a 24-105 f4 and we had the 85 1.4, I believe. I just wanted to take a second to talk about those kaleidoscope lens filters. They're from Prism Lens Effects, really easy to use. One of them just like screwed on to the front of the lens, and the other one was cool because you got to like manually hold it and put it where you wanted it to be to choose what had that kaleidoscope effect. I actually had one shot in there that I used that everybody that I showed thought like I superimposed them in post, where the drummer has like a solo towards the end of the song. I just happened to like flare it towards him, and I just kind of like held it there, and I didn't even notice what I was doing as I was shooting it, but in post when I went and like was looking for that specific shot, I found it and was like geeked that it worked out perfectly. I said all that to say, try things, test them before you get them, and try them, and make sure you have time to play with things when you're shooting. It's great to have a shot list to get everything done, but you also want to give some time to kind of experiment while you're there. Try things you wouldn't normally try because you already know you have that safety net of all the shots that you have. Which leads me to production. Live performance music videos are nuanced in the sense where not only do the artists have to sing well, the band members have to play properly, the cameramen have to make sure they're on their marks, but also the talent has to have the same energy throughout and has to keep like that high energy if it's a high energy song throughout, or else that take is useless. One thing that we made sure to do was getting makeup shots after the fact, which were basically just close-up shots of the artist without the band even being there, with the music playing in their ears, so that if there were anything that we missed, or if they missed some words in the original clips, that we're able to pull from there just to make sure that we were covered on all our bases. One nuance to live performance videos is the balance of band footage and artist footage, because at the end of the day, if it's just the artist with an accompanying band, you want to make sure you're highlighting that artist specifically, but the band is the element of the song that in the original version the audience won't hear. So we want to make sure that we are also using that element to tie into the overall story. It's all really about finding balance on if there's a solo for the guitar player, make sure you give them a second to shine, drum player, bass player, so on and so forth. Videos like this are super easy to overshoot. You just want to make sure you have full coverage, and you end up having more coverage than you need. And I suffered the consequence because I had to be the one to edit all 26 takes and whittle them down, which we'll get into right now. All right, so now I'm in Premiere Pro. First thing that I did was organize the clips, put them in their folders so I don't get confused with what's going on. So if we jump into For the Stars, this sequence was literally just me putting all of the clips and syncing them together, going through them and finding like the best piece of each clip. We did different takes from each angle, and if I found that the beginning of one angle didn't have as much energy or feels out of focus, I was able to use the other take from that same angle and put them together that way. So it was less of using multiple takes and more of getting like a super take for each angle and putting that into the sequence. So as you can see here, there's like 18 different clips. What I wanted to do was be able to whittle them down so I can use them in a multicam sequence. I was working on my 2017 MacBook Pro, so there was no chance, even with proxy files, of me being able to see all of these clips and have them run smoothly simultaneously. So what I did, which actually worked in my benefit, was whittle them down, make kind of like super sequences, whereas each angle I would combine the best parts of each take for that angle. So if you take this angle, for example, we shot like 2 or 3 different versions of this same take. So if like the artist didn't have as much energy at the beginning, I would use a different version of this same angle to make sure that we have like that consistent energy. Or if it was even stuff like focus was missing, I was able to use the best of each of those takes and put them together to make like a super sequence. This part was super difficult because I was splitting hairs for the most part, where some of the takes looked identical, so I had to just make a decision on which one I was going to use. But once I narrowed it down, it actually made the overall editing process a lot smoother. Then I nested all those clips and enabled multicam sequence, so I was able to view all the different angles simultaneously. So from there, I was able to see all the clips and literally just play from the beginning. And as I was playing, I was able to click which camera angle I wanted to use. So as the music was playing in the background, if I like this shot, I was able to cut to it. And you could also use the number pad on your keyboard to be able to cut between the different angles. This was really fun for me because I was able to play it back live, be able to see which shot or which angle worked the best, as opposed to having to one by one view them and cut that way. This felt like the best way of getting the feel for the room, and also not having that like FOMO of, oh, I wish I would have used this clip here or here, because I can look at all of them simultaneously and make the best decision from there. So once I was happy with the cut, it kind of looked like this. It shows the different numbers and it shows the angles that you're using. You can always click on them and drag them back or move them how you want to. You can always change the number by pressing that on the keypad. And then from there, I added a bunch of B-roll shots. I went back and viewed all those clips that I'd passed up on and just did a once over and made sure that I didn't miss anything, or if I wanted to add some cutaways to the band, I actually used some color coordination. I used brown for band. Why? I wish I knew. I think because band starts with B. Or why didn't I use blue? The world may never know. One thing that I had to be intentional with was making sure I was matching the pace of the video with the song itself. So for the slower parts of the song, I had to make sure that I was cutting a little bit slower, but also making sure that I was keeping the overall pace of the video fast and moving quickly so the viewer doesn't get bored watching it. I'm not a professional colorist by any means, but this is just the before and after of the coloring that I did. One tool that I love is Cinematch. It's totally worth the money in my opinion. All you do is drag it onto your clip and you put the settings of your camera, your model, all this and that. And then you go into the target settings of the camera that you want to emulate. So for example, if I want to use the Blackmagic colors as opposed to the Sony colors, I can have my Sony match my Blackmagic and vice versa. And the cool thing is that you can quickly apply a Rec 709 LUT just to get a better idea of what it can look like. I can make a whole separate video on Cinematch alone because it's just such a powerful plugin. And that's pretty much it for post-production. Things that would have changed. First of all, we would have shot earlier in the day because we started losing light at like 3:30 or 4, and that stained glass started fading and fading. We tried to light it from behind and it didn't really work. So we ended up basically not having stained glass lighting for the majority of the videos, which was a bummer, but it still worked out. With 5 cameras on set, I would have loved to have a multi-viewer cam with wireless links for all of the cameras so that I can monitor what everybody's shooting and making sure we're having the coverage that we need. And on that same note, having wireless comms for all of the camera operators to make sure that we are capturing all of the things and that we're on the same page. And one thing that I touched on earlier, I definitely would have whittled down those 8 or 9 takes of 5 separate cameras to maybe 2 or 3 takes from those 5 cameras to have a lot more manageable, quick workflow in post-production. I also wanted to use this overhead lighting rig where the scrim kind of floated above the artist's head out of frame, and you have this really cool like top lighting. We weren't able to get it. We weren't able to figure it out in time with the budget, so we had to scrap it, but I'll definitely try to be using it in a future video. This is super nitpicky, but I wish the truss lights were movers instead of stationary lights. They wouldn't have been moving super fast or anything, but it would have just added some dynamics. And in that same vein, having the wide shot be on a slider or some type of movement like a jib or something, as opposed to just being static, would have given a lot more motion and fluidity, since it's mixed in with a bunch of handheld and tripod movement shots, just to have a little bit more cohesion. We ended up using some digital zoom and post on those wide shots for some of them, just to kind of have them flowing a little bit more and keep the pace. And that's pretty much it. That's how I planned, shot, and edited these videos. If you like this video, feel free to like and subscribe for more. Let me know in the comments if there are any other type of video breakdowns that you guys want to see, and if there are any topics that I covered in this video that you want a little bit more in-depth coverage on. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.